In today's video, we are going to take one of the flowers that we did in the last video, and the one we're working on is the bottom left. And we're going to turn that into a really fun folk art painting. So we're using our regular number 4 round brush and our watercolor paper, as well as some Woad paint. So this is watercolor paint that I've made from the Woad plant, and it's just a fun, soft grayish green brush. So I have done a printable of this particular painting. So if you don't want to sketch it all out ahead of time, if you want to print it out with an outline, go ahead and grab the link from the description and grab it off my website. Completely free and just kind of a fun way to, I don't know, expedite your painting process. But here you see we're following the general strategy of how we painted this flower in the last video, which is a vertical stem followed by some structure. And then, as you can see, I'm just adding in some Woad paint. I should just start calling it my watercolor paint instead of Woad. But just sort of filling that in with a soft mixture of paint and water for a mix of wet on dry and wet on wet technique. So I just want to make sure I'm, playing around with the stem a little bit, adding a dot to the very bottom, just adding in some visual interest. And now I'm going to grab in some yellow ochre. And with this, we can just add a few dots at the top of the flower. Folk art is such a fun style. It allows you to play with different geometrical shapes and bring them in for a semi-realism, semi-impressionistic approach to your painting. So what I'm going to do now then is take just my brush and lightly sketch out the outline of some framing leaves. Maybe this is, the flower just burst from the stem and part of those initial leaves are still on there. But they're just slightly hugging the base of the flower, not quite touching the stem. So once again, we're not going for realism here, we're going for balance and evoking the components of a plant without bothering too much about where it meets the stem, or making it look too much like worrying overly about does this look exactly like a plant does in real life, because it doesn't matter. Adding in a couple of smaller leaves at the bottom, just sort of giving that nice balance of, we've got this framed petals at the top, and now we're drawing the eye downwards in a way that's not competing with the flower, but accenting it and serving as a sort of frame. And here I'm looking for opportunities to add a little bit of that color contrast, that yellow ochre, which again, it doesn't compete for, that Woad, the greenish, bluish gray color that I'm using. It isn't a bold color, so we want to make sure that whatever we accent it with isn't going to detract. At this point, the crown of my flower has dried, so I can take a little bit more pigment and start reiterating those lines, that structure of the flower. So I'm being somewhat conscientious at this point to keep these lines very straight, evenly spaced. They're all ending straight up and down near the top with a gentle little curve as they get to the bottom of the flower. This is really such a fun way to play around with your folk art style by focusing on just one flower type and adding in the leaves and the little dot accents. Maybe we'll call them berries, maybe they're seeds, but just finding out the different ways. How do we amplify a flower picture and add in some different leaf types. Here we're going for long and slender. And it's just so fun and such a simple way to really celebrate the oncoming of spring here in the Northland. It is not even close to being spring. We had, it was like, I don't know, we just had 4 inches of snow recently. We've got another 4 inches coming in a couple days. It's been about 20 below zero, and it's lovely and it's nice and it's a cozy time of year. But at the same time, I have been starting some seeds for the garden. This is really the first time that I've ever taken this time of year seriously and tried to take advantage of it and said, as I'm dreaming of my garden and in the feel of the earth under my bare feet and warm sun on my face, what can I do to still celebrate this time of year and take advantage of when up here at least it's really far too cold to spend much time at all outside. So yeah, definitely having fun playing around with some growing lights for the first time this year, and it is amazing what a difference that makes as our days are still pretty short. But here, going back to the painting, I'm just playing around a little bit with, okay, so we've got our main focal point of the flower. What other little, I think it just looks maybe a little bit sparse and austere at this point. So we're adding in tiny little blossoms, that little leaf shape, and then 2 more leaf shapes on either side. The top ones, just outline. You can shade them in if you'd like to. And I'm doing this with my, as you will know by this point, my favorite color, indigo blue, and gently connecting these to some of those lines that we made earlier, some of those swooping leaves, which have now turned into flower stalks as we're building out this painting. And I really cannot say enough about how fun these little Scandi-style floral paintings are, because they really do, they just grow. You start with a single flower and you build it out and say, how do I create something that's balanced, that's bold and delicate and really evokes that feeling of growth and excitement and biodiversity. So it's simple. It's unassuming still and very non-threatening. So I just love it. Feel free. You can always add more to your paintings, but I think simple is so good and it's so fun. So I hope you enjoyed the painting today, and I hope that we'll see you next time as we take another one of the flowers that we worked on in those 6 core florals and revisit them and see what we can do.